The room felt too quiet for what was about to happen. I was standing near the glass wall of the boardroom, holding a coffee cup that had gone completely cold. I don't even remember when I stopped drinking it. My eyes were fixed on one thing only: the table in the center of the room, where my father was about to change everything without even realizing it. There were around 40 people in the room. Senior partners, investors, a few family faces I hadn't seen in years, and of course my brother Derek, sitting right at the head of the table like he already owned the building. Like this moment belonged to him. My father, Richard, stood beside him. Straight posture, confident face, the kind of expression that always made me feel like I was still trying to earn something that was never meant for me. He opened a file in front of everyone. And then he picked up the pen. That pen, a Mont Blanc. The same one I had gifted him on his 65th birthday. I remember choosing it carefully, thinking it would mean something. It did, just not in the way I expected. He signed the document slowly, deliberately. And then he spoke. From this moment forward, he announced, operational control of Harrove Logistics would be transferred to his son, Derek. The words didn't just stay in the air. They landed on me like something heavy. Final. Certain. Public. A few people clapped. Derek stood up almost instantly, adjusting his jacket like he had rehearsed the movement 100 times in the mirror. He smiled, shook hands, accepted congratulations like he had already lived this life before. His wife clapped the loudest. Expensive shoes, perfect smile, the kind of confidence money makes people wear even when they haven't earned it. And me? I didn't move. I didn't clap. I didn't smile. I just stood there, watching my father look at my brother with pride I had spent my entire life trying to receive. But I never got it. Not once. And what no one in that room understood was simple. This document they were celebrating meant nothing. Legally. Operationally. Completely meaningless. I took a slow breath, then another. And I let it happen. Because I didn't need to interrupt anything. Not yet. Before I continue, I want you to understand something. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old. To my family, I have always been the serious one. The quiet one. The one who never quite fit into their idea of success. But to the people who actually run Harrove Logistics, I am something very different. I am the majority shareholder. And I have been for a long time. This company was never just my father's legacy. It was a broken system when I joined it. Outdated processes, collapsing margins, and decisions made on emotion instead of logic. I was given a small desk in the corner when I started. Nothing important, just numbers, reports, and instructions to be useful. So I did exactly that. I started with the basics. I studied everything. Every contract, every vendor deal, every unnecessary expense hiding in plain sight. And slowly things began to change. A new logistics system cut delivery costs by nearly 20%. Old supplier agreements were renegotiated, saving millions every year. New managers were hired, people who actually understood how to run operations instead of just inheriting positions. And for the first time in years, the company stopped bleeding money. It started growing, but none of that mattered at home, because in my father's eyes, I was still just the detail girl. Meanwhile, Derek could show up late, miss deadlines, lose clients, and still get a pat on the back, as if failure was part of his personality instead of a problem. I remember one audit report clearly. A business trip falsely labeled as client entertainment. Expensive, unnecessary, completely wrong. I flagged it. My father told me to drop it. So I did. Not because I agreed, but because I was learning something far more important. I was learning how power actually works in this family. And it had nothing to do with performance. It had everything to do with perception. Over time, I stopped expecting fairness. Instead, I started building something else. Quietly, carefully, while they were busy celebrating titles and appearances. I was studying corporate law at night. I was doing an executive MBA. I was talking to investors, understanding ownership structures, learning exactly how control actually shifts inside a company like this. And slowly, I started making moves no one noticed. Small acquisitions, share purchases, agreements written in perfect legal language. Nothing suspicious, nothing dramatic, just ownership shifting one piece at a time. By the time my father had his heart scare 2 years ago, I already understood something he didn't. This company wasn't just something I worked for anymore. It was something I was quietly becoming part owner of. And today, as I stood in that boardroom watching my brother accept a future that was never fully his to begin with, I already knew something no one else in the room did. This wasn't a transfer of power. This was the moment they were about to realize who had actually been holding it. I stayed silent as the room kept celebrating. Hands were being shaken, polite laughter was floating across the boardroom, and Derek was still enjoying the moment like it had been reserved for him his entire life. But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was watching my father. He looked satisfied, like a man who had finally done what he believed was right. Like he had closed a chapter he thought had been open for too long. He had no idea he hadn't closed anything. He had opened something else instead. My attorney, Sandra, was sitting quietly at the back of the room. She didn't move. Not even once. That was the signal. The room kept going for a few more seconds, until Sandra finally stood up. No rush. No drama. Just calm control. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The entire room slowly turned toward her. "I need to address a procedural matter before this transition is considered complete." The word procedural changed the energy in the room instantly. My father frowned slightly. Derek stopped smiling for half a second. That small crack of uncertainty appeared in his expression. Sandra walked forward with a thick bound folder in her hand. She placed it on the table, right between them. "This," she said, "is the official shareholder registry for Harrove Logistics." Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that feels like something is about to break. She flipped it open. According to company records, fully maintained and legally filed, there is an updated ownership structure that must be acknowledged before any operational changes can be validated. My father leaned forward. For the first time, he didn't look confident. He reached for his glasses slowly, like his body was starting to understand something his mind hadn't accepted yet. He opened the page, and I watched his face change. At first confusion, then calculation, then stillness. That kind of stillness people have when reality stops matching what they believed. "Derek," he said slowly. "Look at this." Derek leaned in. He read once. Then again. "What is this?" he asked. Sandra didn't hesitate. "It's the current shareholder registry." She turned a page slightly. As of January 14th this year, Claire Harrove holds 51.3% ownership of Harrove Logistics. The room didn't react immediately. It didn't understand what it had just heard. But I saw it. The shift. The moment comprehension started spreading from one person to another like a quiet infection. Derek straightened up. He looked at me for the first time properly. Not as a sister. Not as someone in the background. But as something he hadn't calculated for. "This isn't possible," he said. His voice was controlled, but not stable. Sandra answered without emotion. "It is not only possible. It is documented, verified, and legally binding." Then she added something that hit even harder. Every acquisition was completed in accordance with corporate law and fully disclosed in the registry. A pause. Then she continued. "The registry has been accessible to all board members for years." That sentence did more damage than anything else. Because it didn't accuse anyone. It simply exposed the truth. No one had looked. The room had gone completely still now. Investors shifted in their seats. A few exchanged looks. Some already understood before others did. One of the older investors at the table leaned back slowly, like he had just confirmed something he suspected for a long time. My father closed the file. Slowly, carefully, like it suddenly weighed more than before. He removed his glasses, rubbed his forehead, and when he looked at me again, it wasn't the same look anymore. Not pride, not disappointment, something closer to realization. Like he was seeing me for the first time without the filter he had used my entire life. "How long?" he asked quietly. I answered simply. "Since 2022. A pause. "Why didn't you tell me?" That question. It wasn't angry. It was confused. Like he genuinely believed I had broken some invisible rule. I kept my voice steady, because I didn't need permission to follow the structure we created. That line landed harder than anything else in the room. Derek suddenly laughed once. Not because it was funny, because his mind couldn't process it yet. "This is a joke," he said. "This has to be some kind of manipulation." Sandra turned to him. "No." Her tone sharpened slightly now. "This is what happens when documentation is ignored and assumptions are treated as strategy." That was the moment the room fully changed. The investors were no longer spectators. They were participants, and they were evaluating everything differently now. My father sat back down slowly, not at the head of the table this time, just somewhere in the middle, like position didn't matter anymore. Because it didn't. He looked at the pen in front of him, the same one he used to sign the earlier document. My pen. My gift. He placed it down without speaking. And for the first time in his life, I think he understood something very clearly. He hadn't been in control of this company for a while. He had just never noticed. The silence after that reveal wasn't empty. It was heavy, like the entire room had shifted its weight onto one truth that nobody wanted to say out loud. My brother Derek was the first to break. His voice came out sharper now, unstable. "This is betrayal," he said. "You went behind our father, behind this family. This is not how things are done." A few people shifted uncomfortably, but I didn't react, because I understood something Derek didn't. This wasn't a courtroom, and emotion didn't change ownership. It never had. I finally turned to him. Slowly, calmly. "I didn't go behind anyone," I said. "Everything I did was public, recorded, and fully compliant with the company's own rules." He shook his head like refusing reality could undo it. "You planned this," he snapped. "You waited for this moment." I paused for a second, then answered honestly. "Yes." That single word made the room tighten again. Not because it was shocking, but because it was true. My father finally spoke, his voice lower now. "No fraud?" he asked Sandra. Sandra didn't hesitate. "No fraud. No breach. No violation." Another pause. "Every transaction is clean." That word, clean, hit harder than anything else. Because clean meant undeniable. My father leaned back slowly, like something inside him had stopped resisting. Derek wasn't done though. He turned back to me, voice rising again. "So what now? You just take everything? After all of this?" I looked at him for a moment. Really looked at him. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just clarity. "No," I said. "I didn't take anything. A beat. I bought it." The room went still again. Even Derek didn't speak immediately, because there was nothing left to argue with. Ownership doesn't care about feelings. It only responds to structure. My father stood up slowly and walked toward the window again. Outside, the parking lot looked the same as always. Ordinary. Unchanged. But the meaning of everything inside the room had completely shifted. He stood there for a long time, then finally asked, almost quietly, "What do you want to do with the company?" That question felt different now. No longer theoretical. No longer ceremonial. Real. I opened my laptop. It was already ready, not because I expected this exact moment, but because I had prepared for every version of it. A presentation appeared on the screen. Clean slides. Simple structure. No drama. Just strategy. "I want to scale it," I said. "Properly this time." The room listened. Not because I demanded it, but because I had already earned it. I walked them through it. Expansion routes. Cost restructuring. Acquisition targets. Regional distribution upgrades. Everything I had been building in silence for years. No improvisation. No hesitation. Just execution. When I finished, no one spoke for a few seconds. Then my father finally said, "You've thought this through." I nodded once. "Yes." He looked tired now. Not defeated exactly, but aware. Aware of all the time he had misunderstood the situation sitting right in front of him. Derek didn't stay for the rest. He stood up abruptly. His chair scraped the floor. His wife followed quickly, her steps sharp and fast, heels echoing down the hallway like the sound of an ending. The elevator doors closed. And they were gone. The room didn't feel the same after that. It never could again. Slowly, the investors began to adjust. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just practically. One by one, they started acknowledging reality the way business always does, late, but inevitably. My father returned to the table. Not at the head. Just across from me. For the first time, we weren't positioned as father and daughter in roles. Just people in a decision. He nodded once. Then said something I didn't expect. "I misread it," he admitted. No excuses. No justification. Just truth. I saw potential where I recognized myself, and I ignored where I didn't. That honesty landed heavier than any argument in the room. I didn't respond immediately, because there was nothing to win from it. Only something to understand. The meeting continued for hours after that. Legal transitions. Operational structure. Future planning. Not dramatic anymore. Just real. When it finally ended, the room emptied slowly. Chair by chair. Conversation by conversation. Until only a few of us remained. My father stood at the door before leaving. He said my name once. Just my name. No title attached to it. No expectation in it. Then he left. I didn't follow. Because I didn't need to. That night I drove home alone. The city looked exactly like it always had. Nothing outside had changed. But everything inside my life had. My phone kept lighting up with messages I didn't open. Derek. Family. Unknown numbers. People suddenly very interested in understanding things they had ignored for years. I placed the phone face down and kept driving. When I reached home, I sat in my car for a moment before going inside. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was finally still. For years, I had worked in silence, hoping someone would eventually notice. That version of me felt far away now. Inside the house, I made dinner. Simple. Quiet. I answered 2 emails, reviewed a report, then turned everything off. Before sleeping, I thought about that boardroom. Not the chaos, not the confrontation, but the moment everything shifted without noise. Because real control doesn't announce itself. It just becomes undeniable. And for the first time in my life, everyone finally saw what I had already become. I didn't take the company. I never needed to. It was mine long before they realized it. And now, so was the future.